The rain came down in steady sheets that November afternoon, blurring the world beyond Margaret Chen's window into watercolor grays and greens. She sat in her wheelchair at the small round table, her weathered hands resting on its wooden surface, staring at the chocolate cake she'd ordered from the bakery down the street. 80 candles would have been too many, so she'd asked for just one. A single golden flame flickered in the dim light of her modest apartment. Margaret had lived in this building for 12 years now, ever since the stroke that took her ability to walk. Her daughter lived 3 states away, busy with her own life, her own family. They'd spoken on the phone that morning. "Happy birthday, Mom. I'm so sorry we can't make it this year. Jeremy has a soccer tournament, Aunt." The reasons blended together after a while. She understood. She really did. Life moves forward, and people get busy. That's just how things are. Through the window, she could see the young father from upstairs walking toward the building, his little boy's hand tucked safely in his own. David Martinez and his son, Tommy. She'd seen them in the hallway a few times, always in a hurry, always with somewhere important to be. David worked 2 jobs, she'd heard from the building manager, raising that boy on his own since his wife passed 2 years ago. Margaret reached toward the candle, preparing to blow it out alone, when she heard footsteps in the hallway. They stopped at her door. A gentle knock. "Mrs. Chen? It's David from upstairs. Are you there?" She wheeled herself to the door, puzzled. They'd exchanged pleasantries before, but he'd never knocked on her door. When she opened it, she found David standing there in his gray polo shirt, still damp from the rain, with Tommy peeking out from behind his father's legs. The boy wore a blue hoodie and held something behind his back. "Hi," David said, a tentative smile crossing his bearded face. "I hope we're not disturbing you. Tommy and I were coming home, and we saw the bakery box being delivered earlier. The delivery guy mentioned it was for your birthday." "It's my 80th, Margaret said quietly, not sure what else to say. "Tommy here insisted we had to come say hello." David's dark eyes were kind, warm. We baked something this morning, didn't we, buddy?" Tommy nodded enthusiastically and pulled out a somewhat lopsided cupcake with rainbow sprinkles. "Happy birthday," he announced proudly. Margaret felt something crack inside her chest, something that had been frozen for a very long time. "You made this for me?" "Well," David said with a gentle laugh, "Tommy did most of the decorating. I helped with the baking part so we didn't burn down the kitchen." "Would you?" Margaret's voice caught. "Would you like to come in? I have a cake too. Plenty for everyone." David glanced at Tommy, then back at Margaret. "Are you sure? We don't want to intrude on your celebration." "There's no celebration to intrude on," she said simply. "Please, I'd like the company." They came inside, and David helped her wheel back to the table. Tommy climbed onto one of the chairs, his legs swinging, his eyes fixed on the chocolate cake with its single candle. The apartment was neat but sparse, decorated with just a few photographs and a potted plant by the window. "Do you live here by yourself?" Tommy asked with the innocent directness of a 4-year-old. "Tommy," David said gently, "remember what we talked about?" "It's all right," Margaret assured him. "Yes, I do, sweetheart. I have a daughter, but she lives far away." "We live alone too," Tommy offered. "Just me and Daddy." "But Daddy says we're a good team." "The best team," David confirmed, ruffling his son's blonde hair. He looked at Margaret with understanding in his eyes. "It's not always easy, is it, being on your own?" She shook her head. "No, it's not." They sat together around that small table, the rain still pattering against the window, and they shared the chocolate cake. David cut careful slices while Tommy told Margaret about his day at preschool, about the frog they'd learned about and the song they'd sung. Margaret listened, really listened, savoring every word. "Can I ask you something?" David said after a while, his voice softer now. "Why are you alone today?" "I'm sorry if that's too personal." Margaret was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing the edge of her plate. "People get busy with their own lives. My daughter has her family, her responsibilities. I don't blame her. After my stroke, after I couldn't walk anymore, I think I became difficult to fit into everyone's schedules. It's easier to just call." David nodded slowly. "My wife used to say that the hardest part about being a parent was accepting help. She struggled with it too, especially when she got sick. She didn't want to burden anyone." He paused, his eyes distant. I wish she'd understood that loving someone means wanting to be there for them. It's not a burden. It's a privilege. You must have loved her very much, Margaret said. I did. I do. He looked at Tommy, who was carefully picking sprinkles off his cupcake and arranging them on his plate. She taught me that showing up matters, being present. That's why when Tommy said we should come see you, I knew we had to. I'm glad you did. They talked for over an hour, about life and loss, about the small joys that keep you going. David shared stories about learning to braid Tommy's hair for preschool pictures and burning dinner more times than he could count. Margaret told them about her years as a teacher, about the students she loved and the retirement she'd imagined so differently. When it was time for them to leave, Tommy hugged Margaret's leg, then scrambled up to hug her properly. Happy birthday, Mrs. Chen. Will you be my friend? I would be honored, she whispered, her eyes damp. At the door, David turned back. Would it be all right if we came by again, maybe next Sunday? Tommy and I could use more friends. I'd like that very much. After they left, Margaret wheeled herself back to the window. The rain had stopped, and the evening light was breaking through the clouds, painting everything gold. She looked at the empty plates on the table, the crumbs from the shared meal, the rainbow sprinkles Tommy had left behind. 80 years old, and she'd just learned something new. Sometimes family isn't the one you're born into or even the one you create. Sometimes family is the single father and his little boy who show up at your door with a lopsided cupcake because a 4-year-old insisted it was the right thing to do. She thought about all the birthdays she'd celebrated, all the candles she'd blown out over 8 decades. This one, with its single flame and its unexpected guests, might just be the one she'd remember most. Outside, the world was still turning, still busy, still complicated, but inside this small apartment, something had shifted. The loneliness that had wrapped around her like a familiar coat had loosened, just a little. And that, Margaret decided, was the best birthday gift of all.